Hello, we are People in Action. Today, we decide to invite another representative from Citizens UK because we see now how important this alliance is to make change for a better life in our communities. We are going to ask to him how this organization can help and assist migrants and undocumented people. Our guest is James, in charge of Citizens UK campaign to settle our states, that aims to regularize the states of undocumented migrants in the UK. Welcome, James. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm James. I'm a community organiser at Citizens UK.
Thank you, James. Now, my partner Yusuf will continue with the interview.
Hi, James. Thank you for coming to our meeting today. I have some preoccupation for you. Has community organizing been important for Citizens UK, please?
Thanks, Yusuf. Yeah, community organising is behind everything we do at Citizens. We want to win change and want to achieve justice, but for us is as important the way we achieve that as what we achieve. And everything we do is led by ordinary people in their communities, building relationships and building power so that they can get a seat around the table on the issues that affect them. And our main charitable purpose is to increase the participation of people in public life. We say public life is anything that involves decisions that affect people's lives and their communities and their loved ones. And that's our approach to change, is to be able to involve people in those processes and train them up so that they have the skills and leadership to make change.
My second question will be, Citizen UK is powerful, and why?
I think in some cases, Citizens UK is powerful. There are some communities in which we've got lots of member organisations. So our members are faith groups, schools, charities, ESOL classes. We have enough of them combined so they pool their money and their people so that they have actually quite a lot of power and involved in decisions that affect people's lives. I think that we've got a long way to go before we're as powerful as we want to be, and everything we do is evaluated from the viewpoint of, does it help us build our power? Because we know that the only way we're going to win justice is if we're more powerful, and at the moment I think we don't have enough power to win the justice we want. So we're constantly thinking through, how do we make ourselves more powerful, and how is that going to lead to change and lead to people being able to have the power they need to be at the decision-making tables.
How long have you been working in Citizen UK for?
So I've worked for Citizens UK for nearly 10 years.
Okay, and my last question will be, which campaign are you working on or have worked on?
So I've worked in my time at Citizens, I've worked on dozens and dozens of campaigns. I've worked on campaigns to get zebra crossings outside primary schools, to stop payday lending companies targeting children in their advertising, to get the employers to pay the living wage to all their staff, and to transform the immigration system, whether that's the fees charged for children when they become citizens, or whether that's a regularization process for our neighbours who live without documents. So I think I've worked on many campaigns. Some of them we've won, some of them we haven't. But the main overarching campaign that we work on is a constant campaign, which is a campaign to develop leaders and to build power.
Thank you very much. I will ask my colleague Daniela to continue the interview with you.
My name is Daniela, and I would like to ask you a few questions. My first question is, how do you people react to your campaign? How do you involve people in campaigns?
Thanks, Daniela. So the way we work as Citizens is we have this principle that we call people before program. So rather than we sit in a room with some professionals and experts, and we think of a campaign, and then we go out and say to people, come and join a campaign that we think is good. Our approach is the other way around, is that we start with relationships. we start with people, and we then say, well, what do people care about? What have we got in common, and what do we together want to work on, and how do we shape that? So all of our campaigns, whether it's the living wage or it's settle our status or campaigns about affordable housing, are developed with people and focused on their interests. So then at that point, then I guess people are involved in the campaign because it's their campaign. And then we try and build the power and build allies and build support from the campaign. And that's when we'll try and do more relationship building to get more people involved in understanding the campaign. And usually the way we do that is by understanding whether it's in people's interests. We don't try and force people to join campaigns they're not interested in, but try and get them to understand why it's important and work with them. And a lot of that comes from sharing stories and people realizing the impact of some of the injustices and the fact that we could do something about it if we were to organize, if we were to come together, and if we sort of build the power needed to create change.
My second question is, what do you think about undocumented migrants?
I think just many of the people that I've worked with in the past 10 years at Citizens have themselves been undocumented, but actually I guess the way I see them, they're leaders in their communities and have an incredible amount to contribute and actually are quite powerful in many ways, even though the system is designed to kind of deny them power. Actually them as people have quite a lot of, often have a vast number of relationship and talent, but just we design a system that blocks that and doesn't allow them to realize it entirely. And so yeah, my feelings, I just feel really angry that we've designed a hostile environment as a way to basically make life more difficult just for people that I know and work with, who are just really incredible people who just want to work and flourish and contribute and live for kind of like safe and like ordinary lives. And I think that's that anger is one of the things that I think that drives me.
My third question is, have undocumented migrants benefited from your work? How?
Yeah, I guess the way that we work is less about, I guess, trying to enable people to benefit, but more about how do we stand together. I think what I've seen in our campaign, particularly in the last year, is just how do we create an alliance between citizens, and that people who either have status or don't have status can stand together and be part of the same team fighting the same struggle. And I think in some ways that we want big change, we want the system to regularize people, but also even just today I heard a story about colleagues in East London that managed to get the NHS Trust to do a dedicated vaccination program with a local church for 31 people who were undocumented in a way that was safe and that the information wouldn't be shared with the Home Office. And so I think just small things like that actually we can win small campaigns and small change on the way, but ultimately we want to build up towards kind of mass regularization processes so people can get the status that they want. But ultimately I think it's less about being able to do things for people, but more about how do we stand together when we organize, how are we allies, and how are we part of the same team.
My last question is, do you have any manifesto in order to campaign against undocumented migrants' deportation?
We don't have any campaigns at the moment against deportation. I think we have in the past, and especially we've had it around making sure that removals are done humanely and without using pain-based techniques. It's something that's happened in the past with Citizens. But our fundamental campaign at the moment is really focused on the idea that actually, whether people are documented or not, the fact is they're our neighbours and they're part of our communities, and the UK is their home, and that just to be recognised in Home Office policy. So rather than trying to remove people, which in many cases is impossible and impractical anyway, it'd be much better for everyone, including the government, for people to be able to be regularized and have their status settled so that they can genuinely participate in their communities.
Thank you very much. My classmate Pedro will continue with the interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Hello, James. I have 4 questions for you. The first one is, what kind of support do you give to undocumented migrants?
So the way that we work as an organization is mainly around the support we give is around leadership development and understanding how to make change. So we don't give kind of either legal support or kind of advice, sort of immigration advice or anything like that. But what the support we give is to say, what do you want to change? And organizers like myself or others will provide the kind of the strategy and the training and the support needed in order for you to basically maximize your chances of making the change that you want to make. We teach people skills about how to build relationships, how to negotiate, how to understand power, and all the skills alongside that you need to organize effectively and to win change.
Thank you. The second question is, has Brexit affected migrants? Could the number of undocumented migrants increase due to Brexit?
Thank you, Pedro. I think Brexit has affected migrants in a number of ways. I think first of all, a lot of the language and the way the campaign was fought itself had a negative impact on many migrant communities. Their feeling of how welcome they were in the country, and how physically safe they were, which is a really awful thing. I think the real way it's going to impact on numbers of undocumented migrants we won't know until the summer and after the deadline. But I think most people I've spoken to assume that there's going to be a number of people who, first of all, don't get settled status or pre-settled status by the time that comes. So there's going to be a whole further number of undocumented migrants. Also, the people with pre-settled status, I think it's going to be really challenging to get to the point where that status is settled for a lot of people. I think long term, it's also going to end up with more people becoming undocumented. And then lastly, I think there's some challenge for a lot of the children who are born to migrants who don't have settled status, who won't be British citizens when they're born, and then are going to face a struggle when in really high fees of over £1,000, even if they do qualify for citizenship. And so it's going to put more pressure on our already broken system. And my fears is it's going to dramatically increase the number of undocumented people in the UK.
Thank you. My next question for you is, do you think the government could be in favor of regularizing undocumented migrants?
I think they could be. So Citizens UK has worked with the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, for over 10 years on a regularisation process. He supported it as Mayor of London. He supported it after he stopped becoming Mayor of London. He supported it in the Brexit referendum. He was talking about a regularisation process. He supported it in the hustings to become the Conservative leader. He supported it in his first week as Prime Minister in Prime Minister's Questions. So this is a long-term commitment from the Prime Minister for a regularisation process. And I think there's no other policy that I can think of that has this level of support from the Prime Minister that would have such a big impact on people's lives. And so I think we need to make the most of this. I think the challenge is lots of the Conservative MPs we've spoken to are very supportive of the policy, but are worried about talking about it publicly. And I think that's the challenge we need to overcome, because I think the media has a particular portrayal of migrants that means that a regularization process is difficult, but not a challenge is insurmountable. But I think that's the challenge for us, I think. And everyone knows it needs to happen, the Prime Minister included. We just don't have perhaps the political leadership or confidence for them to actually turn this into policy.
Thank you. My last question for you is, what's the best solution for undocumented migrants for you?
I think the ideal solution, well, first of all, there needs to be a a way in which migrants who are living without documents can regularize their status. For me, the ideal solution would be that there is an ongoing way, basically a pathway to status for anyone who calls the UK home, anyone who lives in the UK. I think the most probably realistic solution in the short term at least is that we have a one-off regularization process, just given the high level political support that this has, including from the Prime Minister. And I think that's doable. We've seen we've lived through a pandemic together. People have stepped up to support their neighbors at this time, and it shouldn't matter if your neighbor has immigration status or not. They're still our neighbor. And I think now's the time for that sense that's come through the pandemic to be recognized in government policy and to actually regularize people's status so they can genuinely live here, and put down roots in safety and participate in their communities.
Thank you, James, for your time and your answers. Now my partner, Osvaldo, will continue with this interview.
Hello, I have a question, James. Do you have an idea about how the pandemic have affected the undocumented migrants?
Yeah, we did a listening campaign at the beginning of the pandemic, where we spoke to people who are undocumented and asked them, how has this affected you? And actually what we saw was actually it had a really awful impact. First of all, a lot of people were kind of working informally, and whether in restaurants or shops or on construction sites, and all of that work stopped. So we left people with no access to any income at all. So people were in an incredibly difficult situation. The other challenge is that migrants undocumented migrants don't have access to much of the NHS, and so when it's a global health pandemic, it also causes lots of fear, and people are worried about, for example, taking a vaccine, and may be forced to be exposed in situations where they're more likely to contract the virus than otherwise, and won't benefit from a lot of the government support that's been put in place. So I think, overall, I think it's had an awful effect on everybody, but I think we've designed a system that means that it's going to disproportionately impact people who don't have settled status.
Where can people find the information about the Citizen UK and about campaigns?
So we have a brand new website that was just launched 2 weeks ago, which is www.citizensuk.org.
Okay, and my other question is, has anything changed as a result of the citizen, our statute campaigns?
Yeah, I think there's been some small changes that have happened since we've been campaigning. Things like people being able to have access to the vaccine, for example, in a safe way. But the main change we're waiting for, which is for the Home Office to start a regularization process so people can get status. That sort of hundreds of thousands of people can get status. That hasn't happened yet, but we're hopeful that it will happen soon.
What do you think about undocumented migrants' future in the UK?
My hope would be that the UK will become a place that is welcoming and a place of compassion and welcome for people who are here who are undocumented. Basically, for anyone who makes this country their home, I would hope they'd be welcomed and treated with compassion. But I think my fear is actually we're going to make things harder and more hostile, and it's going to become a very difficult place for people to live, even though they'll be part of our communities, but be treated very differently and have a very challenging very challenging environment that's incredibly hostile, that's incredibly racist, that's incredibly unjust, and that they'll have to live with. And I think that makes me really, really angry. I think that's why I'm so determined that we are able to build the power we need to secure a regularization process, because otherwise we're unnecessarily making hundreds of thousands of people live through an awful injustice.
Thank you very much. For next question, I will pass for my colleagues, my classmate Ricardo, and he will make this question.
Hi, James. I have 3 questions more for you.
Ricardo.
What is the Prime Minister's position in undocumented migrants?
So over the past 10 years, the Prime Minister has repeatedly called for a regularization process for people who are undocumented. We have, I think, more than 10 occasions we have him on record calling for this policy, starting at the London Citizens Assembly in 2008.
What would you recommend to a person who has an immigration issues? Where can they seek help?
Yeah, I think people, the hardest thing, I think the challenge we have is that it can be very difficult to find a good immigration lawyer. The government has cut the legal aid and has made it very difficult to find legal advice, reliable legal advice. And there are a few organizations that do provide that legal advice, but to be honest, and for example, the law centers, it can be very hard to get appointments. At the moment, there's not the capacity that's needed, and so people can get affordable and reliable advice. And I think there's a few funding initiatives that are on the way to provide more advice, but I still don't think it will be at the scale needed. One of the things London Citizens are working on a mayoral election campaign, and we've got a big mayoral election assembly with thousands of people in the London mayoral election candidates. And one of the things we're asking for the candidates is to identify and address the barriers to migrants without secure status getting decent advice, and then to address those issues. And I think that's going to need to be a long-term commitment from whoever becomes mayor of London, because the scale of the problem is massive, and actually there's no easy answer. It's very difficult to find reliable, affordable lawyers. But that's the thing. I think that probably is so important, because I've seen many people end up with very difficult pathways, or impossible pathways to settle their status because they had bad advice, or they saw lawyers who gave them the wrong advice or were negligent.
James, my last question for you. How can people get involved in the Settle Our Status campaign?
I think we're always looking for more people to join the campaign so that we can have more strength and more power to be able to create change. On the Citizens UK website, www.citizensuk.org, there's a page called Settle Our Status that gives you a contact email address to get in touch with, and then you can be added to the team that's trying to change this issue and make a difference.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you, Ricardo.
In conclusion, today we have interviewed another representative from Citizen UK, but this time we have spoken about a migrants' problem who are struggling to get a legal right to live in the UK. We know how difficult it is for undocumented migrants to live in this situation because they struggle to find a job, access healthcare, NHS, schooling, colleges, and more, and also they feel like prisoners without freedom. Citizens UK is running a campaign, Settle Our Status, fighting for justice to make change and give the opportunity to these people to be part of our society. Over 10 years ago, the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London at that time, in 2008, had committed to Citizens UK to regularize the status of undocumented migrants. It was in assembly which was recorded. So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, don't forget your commitment to help undocumented migrants. These people deserve a better life, and as well, it will be good for the UK. It will be a good opportunity for the UK to gain knowledge, skill, and become more integrated. Citizen UK is combating this injustice and needs us to join them to build power and be successful. So what are you waiting to get in touch with and be part of the team? Thank you for watching.